Alright. I have 5 lights up top. They're all amber in color. They're all properly mounted, secured, not cracked or broken, and they are working. The 3 in the center are my ID lights. The ones on each side, those are my clearance lights. Come down, I got mirrors mounted to the side of my hood. They're properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. Checking my headlights. The lens clear in color. Got my high beams, low beams, properly mounted, secured, not cracked or broken, and they are working. Beside of that, I have turn signals that are amber in color, properly mounted, secured, not cracked or broken, and they are working. They also function as my forward flashers. On the side of that, I have reflectors, amber in color, properly mounted, secured, not cracked or broken. Checking my license plate, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, no missing hardware. My tags and registration are up to date. Looking underneath my truck, making sure I got no hanging wires, no hanging hoses. I'm also making sure I got no dripping, no signs of puddling going on. If I was leaking, I could be leaking coolant, power steering fluid, or oil, but none of that going on, so I'm good. Now I'm checking my tractor trailer, make sure it's not leaning one side or the other. If it was, it could indicate one of 3 things. 1 being a busted suspension, 2 being low tire pressure, or 3 being that my cargo load has shifted.
We'll jump to this truck because he's fucking gonna have that engine running. Yeah, for sure. Oh, scoop. Yep.
Pull it up on that side.
Oh, okay.
It stays stuck right here. Alright, when I come to this side,
Scoop.
I'm checking all my hoses, make sure they're all properly mounted, secured on both ends. No abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and not leaking. Checking my exhaust, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. No signs of excessive rust or soot because that could indicate a leak. Checking my alternator, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and it is belt driven. Also have electrical lines right here and right here. They are properly mounted, secured, properly covered, no exposed wires. My belt is properly mounted, secured, not ripped, torn, or frayed. And if I pull on the center of this belt, I have no more than 3/4 inch play. Checking my frame, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, no illegal holes, no illegal welds. Then I'm going to check my suspension, starting with my front spring mount. Make sure that it is properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. I'm then going to check my leaf springs, make sure they're properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not shifted. If I had 4, I would be allowed 1/4 damage. But since I only have 2, I'm allowed 0 damage. I'm going to check my U-bolts, make sure they're properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. Then going to check my shock absorber, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. Back here, I'm going to check my shackle, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. Then I'm going to check my brake system, starting with my brake hose, make sure it is properly mounted, secured on both ends, no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and not leaking. I'm going to check my brake chamber, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and it is not leaking. I'm going to check my brake clamp, make sure it's properly mounted, secured over my brake chamber, not bent, cracked, or broken. Right here, I'm going to check my push rod, make sure my push rod is properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and I'm allowed no more than 1 inch travel on the push rod when the brakes are released. I'm going to check my slack adjuster, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and both of them have these little cotter pins in place. I'm back here behind my tire. I'm going to check my brake drum, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, no bluing, no glazing, no grease, no oil. Inside my brake drum, I'm going to check my brake lining, make sure my brake lining is properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and my brake lining is no less than 1/4 inch wear at its thinnest point. I'm going to come out and check my tires using the ICD method. ICD stands for inflation, condition, and depth. For inflation, I'm going to go off the outer wheel wall, whatever the manufacturer's specs say, and to check or adjust, I would do so on my valve stem using a commercial air gauge. And my valve stem is properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and is not leaking, and it does have a valve cap on it. For condition, I'm checking my outer and inner wheel walls, make sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and not leaking. For condition, I'm also checking that my tires are wearing evenly. I am not allowed recap or retread tires up front. These tires must be brand new and never mismatched in size. My depth is no less than 4/32 in depth. Also have a depth checker right there, bam. No less than 4/32. I'm going to check my rim, make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and no illegal holes, no illegal welds. Also want to make sure I got a nice tight seal around the bead of my rim with my tire and rim, not leaking any air from there. Also want to check my studs and lug nuts. Make sure they're all properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and none are missing. Also, there's no signs of rust around any, which could indicate looseness. I would then check my hub seal, make sure it's properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. It is properly mounted secured with spider bolts. None are missing, none are bent, cracked, or broken, and no signs of rust around any, which should indicate looseness. To check my hub seal gear oil, I'll pop this rubber seal out. It would either drip out or flow out. If it did not and I needed to add, I would add here, and I would add 90 weight gear oil only. We'll then go to the driver's side of the engine compartment. I will then come to this side and start from the top and zigzag my way through so I don't miss nothing. But first off, I want to point out that there's three things back here you cannot see. There's a fuel pump, a power steering pump, and an air compressor. All three are properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. They are all three gear driven. Right here is my cooler reservoir. It is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. It is clear in color so I can see my fluid level. If I had to add, I would add here. Never while the engine is hot, only when the engine has cooled down. This here is my water pump. It is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. It is also belt driven. Also, if I pull on the center of that belt, I should have no more than 3/4 inch play. This here is my power steering fluid reservoir. It is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. It is also clear in color so I can see my fluid level. If I had to add, I would add here. Again, all my hoses are properly mounted secured on both ends. No abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and not leaking. This here is my oil dipstick. It is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. To check my oil level, I'll pull it out, wipe it off, put it back in, pull it out, see where my oil level's at. If I had to add, I would add here. This here's my steering column, no excessive play on it, properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. Also have U-joints on the bottom and top. My upper and lower U-joints are properly greased, properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. This here's my power steering gearbox. It is properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. I have 5 things I'm gonna bundle together right here. I have my pitman arm, my drag link, my upper knuckle, my lower knuckle, and my tie rod. All 5 are properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and they're properly mounted secured with castle nuts and cotter pins. Castle nuts and cotter pins. I will then come to this side, check my door hinges, make sure they're properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. They allow my door to swing open and close freely. I'm then going to check my mirror mounts and brackets, make sure they're properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. Also want to inspect my door handle, make sure it's in working order, and it is properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. Around my door, I have a rubber weather strip. It is intact, not dry rotted, ripped, or torn. I want to check my side steps, make sure they're properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and free of any slip, trip, fall hazards such as ice, water, grease, and oil, and even debris. And here's my fuel tank. It is properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. My fuel tank is held in place by metal straps with rubber garment underneath so there's not metal on metal friction. They are properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. And also my fuel cap, underneath it has a rubber gasket. It is intact, not dry rotted, ripped, or torn. I also have a chain and T-bar in there so I don't lose my fuel cap. And they are properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. I would then come to my storage compartment, and here I have my emergency equipment. My fire extinguisher is properly mounted secured to the cab. It is fully charged in the green, safety pin in the handle, and is at a 10 BC rating or better. Also have 3 red reflective triangles. None are missing, none are bent, cracked, or broken. Plus I carry spare bulbs and spare fuses on me. This here is a side marker light. It is amber in color, properly mounted secured, not cracked or broken, and it is working. It functions as a 4-way flasher and my turn signal. I would check my side step and my catwalk the same way. Make sure there's no slippery substances that can make me fall. I would also check my frame again. Make sure it's properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and no illegal holes or no illegal welds. Back here, I'm going to check my drive shaft. Make sure my drive shaft is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. On each end, I have U-joints, one right there and one right there. They are properly greased, properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. I would then check my exhaust again, make sure it's properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and no signs of excessive rust or soot, because that could indicate a leak. I would then check my spring hanger, make sure it's properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. My spring job is to hold my lines in place with enough slack adjust to make my turn safely. It also keeps my lines from dragging on the catwalk or rubbing up against the cab. I would then check my lines individually, starting with my emergency red hose, air hose. Make sure it's metal fittings right here and right here are properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking any air. I would also check the emergency hose from beginning, middle, to end, make sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and not leaking. I would then check my glad hand, make sure it's properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. Inside my glad hand, I have rubber gaskets. They're intact, not dry, rotted, ripped, or torn, and I'm not leaking any air from there. I would check my service hose the same way with its metal fittings right there and right there. Make sure they're properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking any air. I would also check service hose from beginning, middle, to end, make sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, not leaking. Also check my glad hand, make sure it's properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. Inside my glad hand, it has rubber gaskets that look like this. They are intact, not dry, rotted, ripped, or torn, and I'm not leaking any air from there. I would then check my electrical line, make sure it's properly mounted secured on both ends, with its locking lever over it, keeping it in place. My electrical line is properly covered from beginning, middle, to end, no exposed wires, and no signs of arcing. I will then check the header board, also known as the nose of my trailer. Make sure everything's properly mounted secured, no missing rivets. Also, there's no excessive bulging and no holes. Also, I have clearance lights at the top, one right there, one right there. They're amber in color, properly mounted secured, not cracked or broken, and they are working. I'll check the side of my trailer the same way. Everything's properly mounted secured. No missing rivets, no excessive bulging, and no holes. Also, I have my DOT tape present all the way down the side of my trailer. Also, I have clearance lights up top, one right there and one back there. They're both amber in color, properly mounted secured, not cracked or broken, and they are working. I would then come under here, check my apron. Make sure my apron is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. I will then check my fifth wheel skid plate, make sure it's properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and it is properly greased. Also have zero gap between my apron and my skid plate. I cannot see no sunlight through. I will then check my release arm, make sure it's properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. It is in the lock position with the safety latch over it. This here is my platform. Make sure the manufacturer weld has not been compromised or lost its integrity. My platform is mounted to my frame with mounting bolts. None are missing, none are bent, cracked, or broken, and no signs of rust around any which would indicate looseness. I would then look down the throat on my fifth wheel. I'm checking my kingpin that is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. I would also check the shank on my kingpin that is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken. I would also check the locking jaws, make sure there's no excessive wear, and the locking jaws are properly mounted secured around the shank on my kingpin. I would then check my brake system for my second and third axle, just like I checked my brake system on my first axle. The only difference here, I'm allowed no more than 2-inch travel on the push rod when the brakes are released. I would then check my suspension on my second and third axle, just like I checked my suspension on the first axle. The only two differences here is I am now at torque spring and I now have an airbag. My airbag is properly mounted secured, no abrasion, bulbs, or cuts, and not leaking. My torque spring, properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not shifted. Back here on my second and third axle, I'm dealing with dual tires, so I have bud spacing between my tires. I want to make sure that bud spacing is free of debris and equally spaced around. I would then check the ICD on my tires, inflation, condition, and depth, exactly like I did the front. The only difference here is I am allowed to have recaps and retread tires. Still no mismatched tires inside, and this depth is no less than 2/32 in depth. I would then check my rim, my studs, my lug nuts, my valve stem on my second and third axle, just like I did on the first axle. The only difference here is I'm no longer at hub seal, I'm now at axle seals. My axle seals are properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and not leaking. They are properly mounted secured with smaller versions of studs and lug nuts. None are missing, none are bent, cracked, or broken, and no signs of rust around any which would indicate looseness. I would then check my splash guard, make sure that my splash guard is properly mounted secured. It does have DOT tape around it. It covers both tires. It's no lower than 2 and no higher than 8 inches off the ground. I would then check my tail lights. 2 are red in color. They are properly mounted secure, not cracked or broken, and they are working. They function as my turn signals, my forward flashers, and my brake lights. Above that, I have a reverse light. It is clear in color, properly mounted secure, not cracked or broken, and it is working. While I'm down here, I'm going to check the cross members, also known as the ribs on my trailer. Make sure they're all properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and no illegal welds. I'm also going to check the floor of my trailer, make sure it's no missing wooden planks and no holes in the floor of my trailer. Make sure it's in good condition. This here is my landing gear. It is properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and my landing gear is fully raised. This here is my sand shoe. It is free to free, properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. These here are my landing gear mounts, properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. This here is my crank handle. It is in working order, and it is properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. It is also properly stored away in the proper stowaway position. I will then come this way. I have the side marker lights with reflectors on each side. It is amber in color, properly mounted secure, not cracked or broken, and it is working. Functions as turn signal and a four-way flasher. Right here, I have spring holding my airlines in place no lower than 18 inches off the ground. My airlines are properly mounted secured on both ends. No abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, and not leaking. Also have electrical lines that is properly mounted secured, no exposed wires, and no signs of arcing. This here with all these holes in it is my tandem. This here is my tandem release handle and my tandem locking pin. All three are properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken. I would then check my brake system for my fourth and fifth axle, just like I checked the brake system on my second and third axle. There is no differences. They're exactly the same. I would check all 7 parts: brake hose, brake chamber, brake clamp, push rod, slack adjuster, brake drum, brake line. I would then check my suspension on my fourth and fifth axle, just like I checked my suspension on my first axle. I have 3 differences here. My spring mount is welded, I have equalizers, and I have a torque rod. All 3 are properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, broken. I would then check the bud spacing and the ICD, inflation, condition, and depth, on my tires for my fourth and fifth axle, just like I checked on my second and third axle. There's no differences. They're exactly the same. I would then check my rim, my studs, my lug nuts, my valve stem, my hub seal, and my spider bolts on my fourth and fifth axle, just like I did on my first axle. There's no differences. They're exactly the same. I would then check my splash guard behind my fifth axle, just like I checked my splash guard behind my third axle. There's no differences. They're exactly the same. I do have an ABS light here. It is amber in color, properly mounted secured, not cracked or broken, and it is working. Also have a side marker light here that is red in color. It is properly mounted secured, not cracked or broken, and it is working. I will come to the back of my trailer. I want to check my 3 red lights up top. Those are my clearance lights. They're properly mounted secured, not cracked or broken, and they are working. I would also check my door hinges. Make sure they're all properly mounted secured, not bent, cracked, or broken, and no messy hardware. They allow my door to swing open and close freely. I would then check my door handles and bars. Make sure they're all properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked, or broken, and no messy hardware. They allow me to open and close my doors and keep them in the locked position. I would then check my tail lights. They are all 4 red in color. They are properly mounted secure, not cracked or broken, and they are working. The 2 on the outside function as my turn signals and my four-way flashers. The 2 on the inside function as my brake lights. I would then check my license plate light with its clear casing over it. Make sure it is properly mounted secured, not cracked or broken, and it is working. I would then check my DOT bumper. Make sure it is properly mounted secure, not bent, cracked or broken, and its DOT tape is present around it. If you want to throw in your license plate, make sure it's properly mounted secure, no messy hardware, tags and registration are up to date, more than welcome to. At this point, I would check the right side of my truck and trailer exactly like I did the left. Would you like me to repeat?
Did he miss anything? Did he miss anything? Anybody catch anything?
You're
No?
ready for DMV.
Okay. Right on, Pete.